So back in 2009, Amazon deleted 1984 from customers' Kindles. Apparently, the publisher who had listed the ebook didn't have the rights to it. And so Amazon had to do something about all the copies that they sold. And the solution they came up with was to just delete them from the Kindles. The incident was kind of alarming because it showed that Amazon had the power not just to deliver content to your Kindle, but to take it away. And not just power, I guess, also the legal right to do so. This isn't the only time something like this has happened with Amazon. In 2012, a woman lost all of her digital content when her Amazon account was suspended for violating the terms of service. So she contacted Amazon about this, and they got back to her via email. I'm going to hold up my notes so I get the wording right here, because in that email, they said that Amazon reserves the right to refuse service, terminate accounts, remove or edit content, or cancel orders at their sole discretion. And then she was told that she shouldn't just start a new account. But I would imagine if Amazon had just taken all of your digital content, you wouldn't want to start a new account so you could buy it again. This could happen to anybody. If you violate Amazon's terms of service, and remember, Amazon can change its terms of service whenever it wants, they could suspend your account, and then you would lose access to all of the books that you bought. Or music or movies, but I've never really bought music and movies from Amazon. What I have bought, though, is a Kindle, and I have over 1,000 books on this. Now, I've been using a Kindle for years. I think my dad bought me my first Kindle when I was like 2009. And so I've been reading on a Kindle for about 15 years. And while the majority of my books are physical, many of them are just off camera here in my studio, I have read a ton of books on this Kindle, and I've given Amazon a lot of money for it. This is also true for Audible. I listen to Audible on my phone sometimes, and I have 310 books in my Audible account. So that meant that if for some reason I ever lost my Amazon account, I would lose access to just under 1,500 books, either in ebook or audiobook form. That is a lot of money. So I want to go a little bit deeper into the problems that Amazon and Kindle and Audible and all of this sort of pose for us. And then I'm going to talk about what maybe we could do about it. A spoiler, there will be no big call for revolution at the end or overthrowing Jeff Bezos, because I don't even own a pitchfork. But I'll talk about some steps that I personally am going to take that maybe you might want to try taking too. But we'll first talk about what makes buying an ebook kind of so weird. So I was looking around on my shelf to see if I could find a copy of 1984, and I couldn't, even though I know I own like 3 copies. So I'm going to pick another book here that you often would read in high school. And so The Catcher in the Rye. So suppose that you wanted to buy this book from me. Well, what you would do is you would come and you would hand me money, and we would agree on a price, and then I would take the money and you would get the book. And once you own the book, you can do whatever you want with it. You could read this book, you could lend it to a friend, you could sell it, you could even burn it, you could try to eat it if you want. You know, it's not my copy anymore. That's your business. And that's because now this book would be your property. And generally the idea is that, barring some exceptions that are usually codified in the law, you can do whatever you want with this property. I'm going to slightly move this here so my Hegel statue is a little bit closer. Now, you don't own the rights to 1984 in general just because you buy this copy, so you can't make copies of it and sell it. That was actually part of the problem with those digital bootlegs that were on Amazon that started off this video. But in general, your particular copy is yours, and so you get to decide what you do with it. But none of this applies to an ebook that you buy, at least from Amazon. It doesn't apply to your audiobooks, and it doesn't apply to actually the majority of the digital content that you buy, even stuff that's not from Amazon. This would also be true for like Steam if you buy video games there, but we're talking just about Amazon here today because it's the one that's like relevant to me. I wanted to make sure I was right about this, so I looked at the Kindle terms of service, and they are very clear that when you make a purchase on Amazon, what you are buying is not a copy of the book. You are buying a license to access that book. When you license something, you acquire a much smaller set of rights than when you purchase it. And basically what you're doing is buying the sort of indefinite right to continue to access your content. Though, as we've seen before with Amazon, sometimes content just leaves its platform. I think this happens most often with movies, where films that you have bought through Amazon Prime suddenly are unavailable, and that's because their agreement expired, and so your license is no longer honored. And Amazon is actually able to change the terms of the license, or what you're allowed to do with the content that you're licensing, kind of whenever they want. You used to be able to take a book that was on your Kindle and let someone else borrow it. So you wouldn't be able to read it while they were reading it, but you could let them borrow it. and that was discontinued in 2022. So you actually lost a right to do something if you owned a lot of Kindle books. Suddenly, the books that you owned could only be read on your account or on someone who you were like library sharing with, and you could no longer just lend them out to friends. So whatever right that you had licensed before, you lost that right. But because of the way that the terms of service are sort of worded, that was totally legal. And if Amazon ever figures out that for some reason that book shouldn't have been on your device, as we saw with the case of 1984, they can just take it away. And Amazon also has the right to just change the content that they've already sold to you. That sounds a little bit like a conspiracy theory, so we're going to get clear on actually what I mean by that. But first, I'm going to take a moment and thank today's sponsor, Brilliant. Brilliant is a fantastic way for you to learn new things. If you're interested in learning things like how to code or mathematics or probability, statistics, things like that, then Brilliant has something to offer you. Brilliant offers structured learning plans with bite-sized daily lessons that are going to make it easy for you to keep learning. And in fact, they're going to make learning fun. Their lessons are designed by top researchers at places like Google or MIT or Cornell. Let's say that you want to learn how to be a programmer. Well, Brilliant offers a course called Thinking in Code. You can learn about loops and conditionals, basically that basic structure for how to think logically and in a certain kind of way that's going to allow you to actually learn things like Python. To try everything that Brilliant has to offer for free for 30 days, you can go use my link. That's brilliant.org/Jared Henderson. Or you could just click on the link down in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thanks again to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. So now we can talk about what I mean when I say that Amazon can change the content that's on your Kindle. So I really love the fantasy series, The Wheel of Time. I really like those books. And in addition to physical copies that I've purchased, I have all of them on my Kindle because that's how I like to read big, beefy fantasy books because I don't want to carry those books around. And the other day I thought maybe I should start reading The Wheel of Time again. It's about time that I could revisit that world. And I went on my Kindle and I went to the very first book, The Eye of the World. And I noticed that something was a little bit different. The cover had changed. So it had gone from kind of a generic fantasy cover, which I never really loved, but at least I could recognize it. And it was now a cover that was advertising Amazon Prime's show, The Wheel of Time, which we're not going to talk about. We want to talk about all the problems that the Wheel of Time show had. Man Carrying Thing had a fantastic video about that. Maybe I'll link that down below along with my sources for this video. So something what I found was that the book cover was different, and they've done this now to the first 2 books. And I imagine as the series progresses, they will continue to change the covers. Now, a cover change is not the biggest deal in the world, but it is kind of a small example of what is possible. I didn't choose to update my cover. Instead, Amazon was just able to make that change. And even if I don't object to the change, even if I don't think the change is a big deal, because I have paid for something, I like to assume that I have the right to decide if it changes or not. I mean, it sounds oversimplified, but it's mine, damn it. And I want to be able to decide if it changes. But again, that's not how Kindle books work. They are Amazon's digital files. You just get to enjoy them while they let you do it. Amazon says that if major changes are made, they will actually ask readers in advance whether or not they want to make those changes. And you're also allowed to opt out of changes in your settings. As far as I can tell, for opting out of changes, it's sort of an all or nothing thing. But if I'm wrong about that, someone could correct me down below. So if I want to allow Amazon to change typos or formatting issues, I also have to allow them to make possibly content changes. And even if Amazon says that they will always tell us in advance, well, Amazon gets to determine its own rules. Basically all of the power is in their hands. You know, there was this trend in the publishing industry a couple of years ago, and I don't know where it's gone since, to take older books and to sort of revise them to remove offensive content. And I don't own any of the books that have been revised like this. So I couldn't check to see if my ebooks actually reflected that or if they were changed based on what the publisher had decided to do. If I had purchased the books previously and then someone changed them, I would be quite upset about that because those books were mine. But again, we have to remind ourselves, they aren't yours. They're just books that Amazon lets you read because you paid them $9.99. But maybe I could learn to tolerate some of this if it weren't for the fact that Amazon also is just really bad for the publishing industry and it's bad for authors. Because of the fact that Amazon is sort of an effective monopoly, and even if they're not strictly a monopoly, they have a lot of monopoly-like powers. Amazon is able to take huge cuts on digital sales. And they're also able, mostly for self-published authors, to enforce exclusivity as a way of telling you, oh, we'll take less money as long as you promise to not sell your ebooks or your audiobooks on any other platforms. So if you're going on Audible and you see those books that say Audible exclusives, the author and publishing company make more money every time you buy one of those books. But the cost of that is that you have to buy it or license it, really, let's be clear, through Amazon or Audible. It's a good way for Amazon to ensure that it's like the only place people think about when they go to buy ebooks or audiobooks. But the more concentrated all of their power is for the publishing industry, the less they actually have to pay authors or publishing companies, and the less incentive they have to actually treat customers with respect or, to let us keep the things that we paid for. So for me, it really comes down to these 3 simple points. I like to own what I pay for. I like to be able to do what I want with the things that I own. And I like companies that treat authors well and actually help sustain an industry that gets me all these things that I like to read. I mean, I spend most of my free time reading, so I would actually like to, support authors in the process. And sometimes I want to support authors even if I'm using something like this Kindle. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? One option is to just stop listening to audiobooks and to stop reading ebooks and to buy only physical books from now on. I like that option. The majority of the books that I buy are physical, but I have to admit, I like ebooks a lot and I like audiobooks. So I'd like to be able to do all of this if it's at all possible. So we need to instead look for kind of other ways. I am looking for other places to buy audiobooks. Obviously, you lose out on those Audible exclusives, but there's things like Libro.fm. I don't know a ton about them, but that's another place to buy audiobooks that I think is friendlier to customers. I'm also looking at other places to buy ebooks. And that's kind of my first step, which is to look for alternatives. I probably need to buy a new e-reader at some point. I don't know much about non-Kindle e-readers because I'm just so used to using a Kindle. So if people have recommendations for those, I would love to hear about them down below. So get a new e-reader, find new ways to get the digital content that also supports authors and actually lets me own my stuff. And then I can move forward from there. It will be significantly less convenient. I might not be able to access every book that I'd like to access, but I'll feel better about the decision in the long run. As part of finding those alternatives, by the way, I am looking to see if I can just totally replace affiliate links on my channel away from Amazon and towards another place. Like there's a website called Bookshop. I've heard good things. I think they have an affiliate program so I can link to books that help support the channel. And if I can get that to work, I will replace Amazon links with Bookshop. I'd say stay tuned as I try to figure it out if that's going to work. But that would just be another way to support an Amazon alternative. The second thing that I'm going to try to do is to embrace localism. So on the one hand, this could just mean buying books from local bookstores. I already do that quite a bit. There's some great bookstores here in Austin. I go to them pretty regularly. Sometimes I have to buy books online because my local bookstores will not stock the books that I want to read, but then I could look for alternatives and not necessarily buy them from Amazon. But we've already talked about alternatives. But when possible, I will be trying to buy my books from local stores. There's a second aspect of localism, though, which I guess you could call like digital localism. I'm no longer trusting a company like Amazon to store all of my content for me. So I'm going to start storing it on my own. I'm going to embrace my sort of inner Lewis Rossman about this and be really paranoid. So ebooks, audiobook files, whatever it is that I could possibly own, I will have it stored locally so that I can access it when I want. And that way, no giant corporation could ever take that from me. And then the third thing I'm going to try to do is just spread the word. So I want to talk, that's why I wanted to make this video. I know this video is not quite my usual content, so I don't know if anybody cares what I have to say about this. But I think it's important for people to realize just kind of how bad of a deal Amazon is, both for you as a customer and for the authors. Then other people could start looking for alternatives and look for local solutions like I'm talking about here. Because absent some like major regulations or a huge surge in competition against Amazon, I don't even know how that would happen anymore. But absent that, the situation isn't going to change. So individuals like us have to figure out what we can do to maybe feel a little bit better about our book purchasing decisions. I've been rambling for a while. I don't even know how long this video is going to end up being. I hope this was valuable. I'd like to hear your thoughts. I think it was at least coherent. If it wasn't, you can let me know. But I look forward to hearing from you down below. I'll talk to you soon.